And it could be the backpack analogy. You've got these big rocks in your backpack, and all the rocks represent all the heavy things that have happened to you, and it's time to let it go. So imagine you could go to a river and you could throw those rocks out and you could empty your backpack. And instead, you could start now this new journey feeling lighter and brighter and so on. Now, you could do that as a direct kind of talking about them, or you could say there was once an old woman who was walking down. Hi, welcome. I'm Meredith McCarthy. This is another talk time, and we've got Ericksonian Hypnosis rolling in. So if people haven't heard of Milton Erickson, he's definitely worthwhile to check out in the way of a key figure in modern hypnosis. So today's topic is unlocking the power of Ericksonian hypnosis and creating lasting change without resistance. We've also got Teresa Saunders. She's going to be asking me a whole lot of questions about Ericksonian hypnosis, so I hope I've got the answers for her. Anyway, buckle up. I hope that you enjoy this episode, and if you're keen on finding out more or want to know more about different topics that we could cover, just comment on the comment section, and we'd love to hear from you.
Hi Meredith, how are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. It's nice to be back here again this week. The week seems to be going around really fast at the moment. So yeah, we're going to change things up. I'm going to ask you some questions this week on Ericksonian and hypnotherapy, which I know are quite a passion of yours, a real passionate subject. So here goes. Question number 1. What makes Ericksonian hypnotherapy stand out from other hypnosis techniques?
I think the first thing is really client-centered, and it focuses on the client's resources. Okay, so he is good at metaphors or storytelling, utilizing those kind of ideas and causing a level of confusion or maybe two different meanings to something. So he's known for confusional techniques that bypasses the critical conscious part of the mind and gets into the subconscious, which is where the subconscious can start to join the dots. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. So it's more of a gentler, more creative path, do you think, for transformation?
I definitely think so. Yeah. The authoritarian style of hypnosis definitely isn't what he would prescribe. However, at the same time, if it's not working for that client, he's quite open to changing. You do what works for the client.
So it's helping to set up avoiding resistance as well along with that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how does ambiguity, there you go, get my tongue around the word, help reduce client resistance in therapy?
Well, when we think about an induction, let's say I get someone to say, well, you could close your eyes now, or you could choose to close them later. But you find that when you close your eyes, you just slip deeper and deeper into a nice state where there's those inner resources that understands the power of a story. So what we're doing there is giving a client a perceived idea that they have choice, but actually we're inviting them to go and do that close eyes and then experience that hypnosis. So there are often very clever ways that you can work with language to get a client to cooperate with you without realizing that it's a direct suggestion.
So I suppose that allows... Sorry?
It's embedded. The suggestion's embedded within the that instruction.
So it allows this change to happen beneath the radar of the conscious defenses.
Yeah.
Okay. So why are metaphors such a powerful tool in hypnotherapy? And I know this is a big subject for you.
I think, again, it helps the subconscious really come to its own conclusions. He used to have a mountain next door to where he was living called Squaw Peak. and he would invite people to go for a walk, and he would simply say, and by the time you walk down the mountain, you'll have the answer. And people would come off that mountain and they would be so happy because the answer just popped in. So it's like this very subtle way of setting up the client for success. There could also be the metaphor of holding a brick for a long time. So you're holding a brick, and at first it's okay. So there you are holding this brick, and then after a while, after a minute, how does it feel?
It starts to get heavier.
Yeah, after 10 minutes, all you want to do is drop it, put it down. And so if we can liken that to stress, and as soon as we let that stress go, what does our body naturally know how to do?
It would relax, it would release.
So we can use the metaphor, the brick analogy, to help a client to understand that actually they have the power to let go of things, and they also have the experience of how stressful it is when you hang on for too long.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So could you give an example of a metaphor that might help someone with self-esteem issues that you would particularly use in your practice? Yeah.
Right. Well, first of all, I'd be very curious first to find out a bit about the client and what is important to them. So if they're a gardener, I might use a garden analogy. Or if they are a sailor, I might use a sailing analogy. So depending on what they relate to, if it's a skateboarder, I might use something to do with skateboarding and fully committing and knowing once you did, it was worth it. So off the top of the ramp and down you go. And most skateboarders who are into that understand what that means. So you need to use some kind of storytelling that is going to help the client, again, join their own dots. So you might say, if it's a garden analogy, you might say, you see all these beautiful flowers of all shapes and colours and forms, and some flowers, they last for a day, and some they last for weeks. And each one comes out in its perfect time. And just like that flower, it knows how to come to full bloom. And when the timing is right, it just is, isn't it? And like that flower, you can find your perfect timing to come to full bloom, can't you? That's right. So it's kind of utilizing the metaphor. You don't always have to be so prescriptive either. So you can miss out just like that flower. You can let the client actually join the dots. You just leave it as the garden analogy and they will make it relate to them. This is the beauty. Sometimes the ambiguous kind of less is more in that kind of Ericksonian style.
And we spoke in previous episodes as well about the client has the answer, yeah.
Yeah. I think the internal resource space, sometimes it just needs time to recalibrate it, just kind of find their center, find their inner compass, which is what I like to call it.
Yep. So how does Ericksonian hypnotherapy weave in solution-focused techniques?
When we're looking at forward focusing rather than issue focusing, I think that's where you start. So if we're focusing always on what was wrong, it's not the easiest kind of session. I think it's important to go into other times that client did something well, and we can utilize ego strengthening, and then we can create an effect bridge into the future of that feeling of confidence arising again because you've achieved this particular goal. So we can definitely be utilizing more future pacing, helping that person to ego strengthen by seeing themselves be successful.
Yep. What's the best way for beginners to create their own therapeutic metaphors? So you being a tutor, the instructor of the school, how would you sort of encourage people, because it can be a bit daunting, this Ericksonian language patterns and metaphors and that for some people. Some people find it extremely easy. So how would you answer that question for?
Well, there are universal metaphors that everyone understands, but also there are also creative things or opportunities that you can create new metaphors, new stories that make something mean something. I think be playful, first of all, and trust that your mechanism of being creative is there, and you naturally use metaphors. You probably don't realize this. I had a student once that swore black and blue he did not know how to use metaphors, nor could he create them. And so for the entire time of the rest of his training with me, I said, that's another metaphor. Thank you. That's another metaphor. He was full of metaphors. He just hadn't observed it from that perspective. He hadn't realized how much we actually talk in metaphors in our everyday language. If I said to you, I'll start off a phase, okay? As cold as?
As cold as ice.
Now, I could say as cold as cucumber.
Mm-hmm.
I could play on it, right?
As cool as a cucumber. Yeah.
Yeah, as cool as a cucumber, as cold as a cucumber. So that's another Ericksonian trick, is he was actually dyslexic, yay, best kind. He would use a different word in this sort of a saying that would create a slight confusion. So it was kind of playing with words a bit. So instead of saying cool,
say cold.
Cold. Yeah.
Yep.
Does that explain that? I hope.
Yep.
Now, if we're thinking about going and practicing, what I would suggest is maybe find 4 basic places that a person may find their comfort space in. So it could be you ask the client, what's your happy place? And they might say a garden. So you go, okay, I'm going to think up a garden analogy that's going to be helping confidence or eliciting confidence. So what might that be? Or maybe they're into sailing. Again, or they like the ocean. So I'm going to think of an ocean analogy, and I'm going to create something that is building confidence. Now, someone else might be, I like a warm, cozy fire inside on a winter's night. And so, okay, let's think about the analogy. So it's amazing how when it's so cold outside, you can put a nice warm fire and suddenly you feel yourself just relax into this wonderful state where the mesmerizing flames just flicker. And all you can think of is just that moment in time and how comforting and how perfect things are. So this is where we can start to lead a client into a visualization that allows that very cozy space to be even more significant, where you're layering in feelings of calm and everything's just right. So that's an embedded suggestion in there.
Okay, so there's lots of new techniques which people shouldn't, worry about at this stage. That's what the school's there for, is to help you move forward with these things. We're just hoping to give you an insight today on Ericksonian and hypnotherapy. So here's another question. Why does Ericksonian hypnotherapy sometimes rely on confusion? Isn't clarity the goal?
Well, again, coming back to confusion being an opportunity to bypass the critical part of our brain. So we've got the conscious watcher, which sometimes is like the bodyguard going, no, you're not coming in. So the person's not going to take on board that suggestion. But if we start to go into storytelling, I mean, how many of you can relate to sitting down and listening to a story and just going somewhere and having this space that obviously is just a story, but almost come to life for you? There's those moments I can remember, Bad Jelly the Witch by Spike Milligan. I loved that. But I never saw the picture book for years. I heard it on the radio, and it just came to life in my brain. And when I saw the storybook, it was like, but my idea of all of these characters was the whole fun of it. And he would describe it in such an elegant way, and he would illuminate his voice. And I think as a hypnotherapist, we have this beautiful gift to be able to tell stories that create impact. And every single story that you've listened to as a child has somehow sculpted you and helped you to understand the world around you using those deep embedded metaphors. We're learning about characters that we might come across in life, good versus evil, what's fair and what's unfair. So these stories are quite magical and quite transformative. And I think used in a therapeutic way can be absolutely gold.
I suppose it's a bit like throwing the conscious mind off balance, just enough for real change to slip in through the back door. Would you? Yeah.
100%, yeah. Because while you're sort of drifting off on there will be some embedded suggestions that your brain will go, oh, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. You almost become the character or the hero of the story. So that's kind of, how many times have you gone to a movie, Teresa, and you've come out just feeling like you could conquer the world. You just feel uplifted and I don't know. I used to have that more as a child, to be fair. But I remember, after Superman movie or something like that, I just feel 10 foot tall.
Yeah. And I mean, there's the other one as well. When you read a book, and like you were saying earlier, you imagine these characters in your own mind and the story. And sometimes it can be a little disappointing when you go see the movie and the characters are nothing like you imagined, or it can equally be the opposite. It can be, oh yeah, that's how I imagined them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move along to another question. So what are some practical ways students can sharpen their Ericksonian skills?
I would invite you actually to go through YouTube and find examples of his old recordings, because some beautiful people have uploaded lots of really neat Ericksonian moments. And I think to listen to how he uses it, to let it come to life in that way, might demystify it a bit and might normalize it. You might be able to sort of go, I could do that. You'll never be him. Okay, so just understand that he had his own elegance and his own way of storytelling, but you can be a storyteller too. You can absolutely utilize metaphors in your hypnotherapy practice, even in conversational hypnosis. So without formal trance. So even without having the person close their eyes and imagine as if. You could go, well, imagine as if even you're waking up tomorrow, everything sorted itself out. What would that be like? And what if the answer came to you right now and that could transform everything? How would that feel for you? So when we're starting to even ask questions, that can elicit a person to start to brainstorm, to start to generate new neural pathways of excitement.
Yeah. Yep. And I guess role playing is another way that people can actually have a go at doing that as well.
For sure. Look, practice equals perfect, right? So give it maybe make up some scripts and practice on a pair and see how that felt for you, or record it and listen to yourself.
That's what I used to do a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Record it and then play it back again. But do remember, though, having said that we sometimes feel that things aren't exactly correct when we say it, but your client doesn't know what they're going, isn't expecting a script. So the odd slip or change of a word or something is not going to make a major difference, is it?
No, that's it. They'll make it make sense. And that's the beauty about Ericksonian style and that confusional style. So you can start a sentence before you finish the other sentence. And it's confusional, but that's what creates the magic of it. And you can also be unspecified with some of the things. So you know what I mean when you go to that place that everyone knows, where everything seems to change, because change becomes quite interesting, doesn't it? Now, what change, where, what space, and who knows, and how does everyone know that, and what do they actually know? So there's
But your
all
client
these
will agree with you.
things
Yeah.
that you haven't specified. And so having a practice of doing that, and stopping in weird places, and having space, and storytelling, all of these things are part of the practice of, I guess, getting more used to using that Ericksonian styled hypnosis.
Okay. So what if a client doesn't seem to respond to indirect suggestions?
Again, you need to be able to be agile and maybe start to be more direct with that client. It's not about sticking to one size fits all. We've got to be flexible. So it may move from an indirect suggestion to a more direct suggestion. So an indirect suggestion could be, maybe you could imagine things happening very quickly. Now, the person may not respond to that kind of suggestion so well. So I want you now to imagine how quickly things can change. So then we're moving into more of a direct. I want you to imagine that.
And I think it's about paying attention again and switching the gears, changing your approach if your client doesn't feel as if they're fitting into what you've started doing.
For
Being
sure.
that client-centered.
Yeah, the best advice I can give anyone is be eclectic with your style. You need to tune in. Is this working for the client? If not, be prepared to drop everything you were just doing and change tack.
Okay, I've got one more final question to round it up today on questions and answers. So how can Ericksonian hypnotherapy help clients with stress and anxiety?
I think, again, it's a wonderful way of just helping them drop into a more relaxed, less resistant state of mind. When you're telling stories and you induce a level of confusion, that helps a person relax into that, whatever that story might be, it really can be quite transformative. If you directly talk to the anxiety, it may amplify it. So if you, okay, here's an example. I had, I think I mentioned this the other day actually, where there was a boy who was a bedwetter and he didn't want to talk about it, but he needed help. So not once in any of the sessions, we had 2 sessions with him, not once did we mention bedwetting. We mentioned things that he had achieved. We mentioned how amazing his body was and how much his body had learnt all sorts of things over the years. And that actually made a big difference for him. So we never talked directly to the anxiety of him feeling rubbish because every time, he'd wake up, the bed would be wet.
And often I find that indirect approach feels more comfortable for clients that are dealing with anxiety or stressful situations.
Yeah. You don't always need to get a client to unpack to the nth degree what's happened to them, to allow them to journey sensibly and mindfully through resolution, to get to that other side where they wake up and the burden, the heaviness of that trauma is now gone. It's been left behind them. And that can be very powerful. You can use the idea of what would it be like if you could let go of all the stones in your shoes. And the stones, they represent all of those hurts, all of those things that have happened that have caused us not to be so steady on our feet. Imagine today you could just let all of those stones out of your shoes and you could put the shoes back on and it just feels so much easier because you've been able to let it go. And is there a part of you that's ready to let go of that today? And normally, yeah, there is. And you go, okay, is it all right for you to do that right now? And once that's done, just let me know. And it's that gentle approach, and that's allowance for the client to have a moment to let go. So I'm utilizing stones representing the past hurts. Most people can relate to a stone in their shoe. It's not very comfortable. And it can feel like that for a person, that they might even come away, and it could be the backpack analogy. You've got these big rocks in your backpack, and all the rocks represent all the heavy things that have happened to you, and it's time to let it go. So imagine you could go to a river and you could throw those rocks out, and you could empty your backpack. And instead, you could start now this new journey feeling lighter and brighter and so on. Now, you could do that as a direct kind of talking about them, or you could say there was once an old woman who was walking down the street, and she had a very heavy backpack on. And she had been having this backpack for so many years that it was just part of what she did every morning. She got up, she got dressed, and she put this backpack on. But there's nothing really serving her in the backpack. She was just so used to wearing it. And then one day she came across this river, and she was very weary. She thought, all I want to do is just rest. I'm going to put my feet in the cold water, and hopefully it'll make me feel less tired, because I'm so tired. I'm tired of all this weight I'm carrying. And then she put the backpack down. And she thought, hang on, why am I carrying such a weight? It doesn't serve me anymore. So with that insight, that moment, she decided to empty the backpack and throw the stones. They didn't go chink, they went plonk. And it felt good. And they just went to the bottom of the river. And they settled where they needed to be. And she was unburdened. And she got up, she put her shoes back on, and her feet were refreshed, and she felt light as a feather, realizing that she had finally decided to move on. So when we're using stories like that, the client can relate to it. And in their mind, they may well be doing that very thing, that ritual within themselves. Makes sense, eh?
It certainly does make sense. Yes, thank you, Meredith. Thank you for answering the questions that I've given to you today, and I hope that for those that have been listening, it's been quite a insight to, or a taster to, the Ericksonian Hypnotherapy, and that they want to tune in and go and look at your website for more information about how to enroll and become a student of the school.
Yeah, you can just visit www.nzach.ac.nz, and there's lots of information there. I keep on being asked a similar question, actually, when people are asking me things about NZQA, New Zealand Qualifications Standards, whether we're recognised. And look, our population in New Zealand is really tiny, and the amount of people who are going to turn up and actually be trained to become hypnotherapists is even smaller. And the amount of money it costs for a training school to actually get NZQA qualified just doesn't justify it. And unfortunately, that's the reality. So even though I'd love to put my school's information forward to NZQA, it's just not viably possible. And I guess what I've done is designed a course that has the highest standard as if it's NZQA, but it has a really clear framework. And we align to the Australian Hypnotherapy Association. It's a 1,000-hour diploma course. And we also align to the NZACH, the New Zealand Association of Professional Hypnotherapists, that standard there. So we are one of the highest ones in New Zealand, actually, with the 1,000 hours, as far as I understand. So, it is a robust course. And that's just answering. I keep on getting a couple of emails for that query. So just in case it was one of you out there, or people who are wondering. So that's us for today. So thank you very much, Teresa. for asking me those questions.
Welcome, Meredith. And I'd just like to remind people to hit the like, subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and please do leave us some comments. Let us know if you're interested on anything else for our next series as well.
Nice. Lovely. So that's us for now. So thank you everyone for tuning in right to the end. And thank you again, Teresa, for your time and your questions.
Thank you. See you all next week. Bye.